This time on Cryptids, I investigate and explore the cryptic side of the state of Kentucky in search of Kentucky cryptids. And with so much paranormal activity going on in the state of Kentucky, I also look at a unifying theory to explain all of the paranormal activity going on in the state of Kentucky. Hi, I'm Jenna Bosiger, and thank you for liking, watching, and subscribing. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to get into the cryptids that Kentucky has been reporting and the high level of UFO activity. There have been reports of Bigfoot, and they call them Yahoos in Kentucky. A story that has been handed down over time about Daniel Boone, whom the forest is named after, killing a Bigfoot in the forest. Draper manuscripts, Daniel Boone papers, Wisconsin Historical Society, Boone myth hunting. And it says, I immediately ran up and jerked him off to find my son. I think he means is he jerked him off of... I immediately ran up and jerked him off to find my son senseless and not breathing. I immediately made every effort for his restoration to life. It seemed to me more than an hour before he breathed. He finally came to, and after using water freely from my canteen, I so far recovered him as to set him up against the tree, and was glad to find no broken bones. In about an hour more, he stood up and talked. I asked him where he had aimed to strike the giant. He said he aimed to hit him in the heart. Both shots. The giant was naked. I turned him over and his back and found broth of the bullet holes near the left nipple and about 2 inches apart, but neither of them had entered the body, but had passed round and came out the back. I then passed my finger into each of the holes and found the giant had no ribs, but solid bone, about 3/4 of an inch thick, what I found out by cutting through the bone with my tomahawk. My own shot struck him in the left eye, which was fortunate. The giant was not an Indian, for he was a pale yellow with long yellowish hair, and not black as is common among Indians. His body was likewise covered with short hair, not very thick. His teeth were all naturally grown together in his head, and rather small eyes and nose, with very large feet and hands. When they stretched him out and laid a supple jack, we measured his length, and in measuring it with my hands, I found that he was at least 10.5 feet high. My son then got another supple jack, and then we made another measurement. One of these was carried by my son and me by myself to Boonesboro, where we measured them by my squaws when we found the height to be 10 feet 8 inches. This is the story of the giant as given to me by Colonel Boone. I asked if he had ever heard of any such among the Indians and what they knew among them, if anything. And he said they had a tradition of giant men and giant beasts, but that the Great Spirit had killed them all. Some were on the Osage River in Missouri, but that he had never credited it. If you look at Daniel Boone, you will see that he is known for, he's a great hunter, and included in that, besides bears and whatever else he could find, he claimed to have killed a Bigfoot or a Yahoo. This just starts in, I found about Kentucky cryptids. According to Henson, the arms were extremely long and the hands were large. By comparison, the feet were very small. The massive skulls, eye, and nose sockets were slits rather than cavities, and the area where the jawbone hinges to the skull was a solid bone. It would seem the person could not have opened his mouth. How such a strange creature could survive, much less grow to giant adulthood, remains unexplained. And another well-known cryptid from Kentucky is the Spotsville monster. So I'm going to go over some news reports about Kentucky Bigfoots and Yahoos being found. This one says, Maysville, Kentucky, strange creature sighted, glowing red eyes, shot .22 caliber rifle. Kentucky family reports meeting with Bigfoot. And then I literally cannot read anything else. It is reported by a man who lives on one of the spurs on Lookout Mountain that there is a wild man roaming about who is of giant size and as hairy as a Newfoundland dog, and as well as he can guess, about 9 feet high and will weigh near 500 pounds, his eyes giving light equal to the moon, an appearance of the most frightful nature, and growls equal to the lion, causing the people in that section to remain home of nights with closed doors and well fastened. So when they say his eyes giving light equal to the moon, I think that they mean that he had eye shine, which is really cool. This is very, very strange, and I don't exactly know what to think of it, so I'll read some. Newark, Ohio, and this is from 1883, a Kentucky wild man. Among the passengers the other night, bound for New York from the west on the day express, was a wild man who occupied a seat in the smoking car number 153. He was accompanied by James Harvey and Raymond Boyd, his captors, both whom belonged to Paducah County, Kentucky. So, and then it goes on just to kind of talk about what happened during the train ride. James Harvey ran down the platform into the restaurant and purchased a box of sardines and some sandwiches for the wild man's supper. His companion remained in the smoker in charge of the wild man. He was dressed in citizen's dress and wore big cloth shoes. His hair reaches nearly to his waist and falls over his shoulders, completely covering his back. His beard as long and thick, while his eyebrows are much heavier than those of an ordinary human being. There is nothing imbecile in the wild man's manners of actions. He cannot talk and seldom makes any sound whatsoever except for a low howl like a leopard. Like infrasound? His actions are as much like those of a hyena in the zoological gardens as is possible for anything in human form to be. Raymond Boyd, who seemed to have perfect control over the wild man, said his body was covered with coarse, brown hair as thick as the hair on a horse's hide. The palms of his hands looked like paws of a bear, and his fingernails, which were over an inch long, resembled the claws of an eagle. He was first seen in Paducah County 13 years ago. Some time ago, a farmer was missing a calf and 2 sheep, which had strayed off. They were tracked to the mum's cave. Here, all trace of them was lost, and it is supposed he devoured them. In his cave, which he had occupied for the last 7 or 8 years, Boyd and Harvey found the skeletons of small animals and the skins of over 50 snakes. Some skins belonged to the most venomous species of reptile. The floor of the cave was alive with red and green lizards, and hundreds of toads hopped about. After the train passed, he would put his hands to his ears and listen with the look of an animal cunning, stealing out of his restless eyes like a panther about to pounce on his prey. And every time the engineer blew his whistle, the wild man would grab the back of his seat with both hands and hold on until the whistle ceased blowing. Boyd had a little tin music box which he manipulated with a crank. The one tune of Empty is the Cradle was ground again and again with great satisfaction of the ex-hermit, who sat and looked at it silently but would not touch it. When the conductor Harry Smith took out his glistening nickel-plated punch to cancel the tickets, the wild man watched the punch intently until he heard it snap. Then he got down in the corner and sat fairly shivering with fear and set upon a low howl, supposing evidently that the conductor Smith was about to wing him. They're going to show him off to a crowd in New York, and in case they cannot make terms with Barnum or some other prominent circus man, they intend to exhibit their prize themselves. Do not know what to think of that article. It doesn't fit in the norm. And it never said how tall he was either. Wild man startles people of Kentucky, hairy creatures seen by farmhand, and both are so scared they prepare to run. And I just can't read any of it. I really can't. I tried. Furry black hair, buried bones, and told him it's a long article. I wish I could read it, but I can't. Antics of a Wild Man, 1884, Louisville, Kentucky. The people of Oldham County are much excited over the antics of a wild man who is roaming through the woods and frightening women in farmhouses. This one says capture. Family of hairy apes seen by hill dwellers, perched on a rock scratching himself. Mr. A raised his gun before being aware of the species. He had heard of such a creature being seen in the woods, and during an observation of about 20 minutes, observed that the gorilla was about 6 feet in height, covered with hair and strongly built, with the arms of great power and length. While those obsessed with UFOs continually search the skies, a delegation of Kentucky researchers prefer to hunker down in the woods, similarly engrossed with unidentified, tall, hairy man-beasts. You know them as Bigfoot. The Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization is a Louisville-based not-for-profit group founded by Charlie Raymond in 1997. Since it began, they've investigated over 276 reports of Bigfoot, and you can go to that website at KentuckyBigfoot.com, and they are actually trying to pass laws to protect their habitat because we're encroaching on their land, and that is true. According to the HBRO website, Bigfoot has been spotted in 87 counties. Henderson County leading the number of sightings, and generally eyewitness testimonies are similar. 7 to 8 feet tall, bulky, about 500 pounds, covered in hair, and stinks. Yeti or not, here I come. Watch out, boy. Gonna find you. Another really amazing location in Kentucky is a place called Land Between the Lakes. In this area, there's reports of dogmen, wolf creatures, bipedal. Even around the area, there have been other reports of dogmen. Both fishermen saw an animal 8 feet long and 4 feet high at the shoulder. Smith compared it to a dog, while claiming that it had no head or tail. The animal ignored them, passing along the creek, where nothing seemed to stop it in its course until it vanished from sight. More than a century later, in the spring of 78, an unknown dog-like animal, larger than a fox, with a long dark tail, attacked a pony at Prestonburg in Floyd County. The beast is back. This one looks like about a dog. This one is about a dog man. And all I can read is, across the clearing, you could definitely see this big dark figure must have easily been over 7 feet tall. Kentucky borders the Ohio River all along the top half, the northern half of Kentucky. So the Illinois part, the Indiana part, and then the Ohio River Valley has a lot of cryptids, and the Ohio River borders Kentucky on the northern portion. Then the Mississippi River, the west border, is a little part of the Mississippi River, and then it goes up into Illinois. Just up the Mississippi River from Kentucky into Illinois, there is a tributary called the Big Muddy River, and it's just off the Mississippi River, just above Kentucky. And There you have the big muddy monster, another cryptid spotted in the Mississippi River, all the way down in Mississippi in Pascagoula. This location looks I feel like I would be dizzy if I was looking out at the Gulf Coast there. You're so close to sea level there. In Pascagoula, there was a case of a creature being spotted that actually looked very similar to the Metal Man, but this creature doesn't have a name, and we just have some drawings of the creature, because these guys had a UFO sighting, and then they saw this creature, the UFO and the creature. Look at its claws. What kind of a creature? That almost looks like some kind of sea creature. This says, Calvin Parker, 19, and Charles Hickson, 45, of Pascagoula, Mississippi, were fishing from the iron pier below in the Mississippi River when a bluish-gray flying saucer landed in the clearing, and 3 5-foot aliens took them aboard the craft and gave them a strange physical examination. Jim Flint, yard superintendent at the F.B. Walker and Sons shipyard, where the men work, drew a rough sketch of an alien as the two men described it. They called the police, and they were very freaked out by the incident. Very freaked out. The Indiana part and then the Ohio River Valley has a lot of cryptids. And the Ohio River borders Kentucky on the northern portion. This picture is of the Frogman, reportedly from a tributary off of the Ohio River in Ohio, right by Cincinnati, which is right on the border of Kentucky and Ohio. And this is the most amazing picture to me. It looks very real. Then in the Ohio River is the green-clawed creature. I heard of one case of this creature almost pulling a woman down below the water, maybe into a subterranean area, maybe to drown her, but the clay that they found on her leg came from deep, 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 deep down in the Ohio River. And she was scratched by these claw marks. So you do have to think about these things, because the Ohio River and its tributaries have some strange things going on. This is probably my favorite cryptid picture I've ever seen. I don't know, I love it. Well, the Shawnee Indians who used to live near the Loveland area told of a creature who they often sighted during hunting. The creature was called a supernatural being by a name that means demon of the river. There's the monster of Lake Harrington, which has the face of a pig. A visit to nearby Harrington Lake rarely goes without tales of giant catfish, alligators, or evolutionary freaks. Nearly all the lake's regular visitors believe there's some kind of creature in its waters. In Fort Knox, which is just below Louisville, there was an incident of the military top pilots trying to catch a UFO. Flyer dies chasing a flying saucer. Plane explodes over Kentucky as near states report strange object. Reported in multiple states, this UFO. Louisville, Kentucky. Several areas of Kentucky and adjoining states were excited today over reports of a flying saucer, which led to the death of one National Guard flyer and fruitless chases by several other pilots. Don't go chasing UFOs. I believe that these were hotshot pilots that full-heartedly believed these were military craft from other humans. In their mind, they probably were thinking, whatever this human can do, I can do. That's probably would have been true if they were human. I think that if they would have considered that these were not human, they would have known better than to attempt to do the same maneuvers that this UFO is doing. The way that the pilots died was by going straight up. I kind of remember like 20,000 feet. It was way above the pressure level for a pilot to not pass out. He passed out, and then on the way down, heading straight nosedive down, he woke up too late to pull out of it, and died on impact. But the cause of the death was chasing a UFO. It's around Fort Knox. And back, in the day, people were reporting UFOs all over. There was an encounter with Louisville police officers who were flying helicopter patrol, and these guys were smart enough to not risk their lives in an attempt to catch it, but they were scared with it. Big UFO blitz in Kentucky's baffling Bluegrass Triangle. A pulsating, multicolored UFO was tracked for hours by a Kentucky state trooper in the latest sighting in Kentucky's bizarre Bluegrass Triangle, where a baffling series of UFO encounters are taking place. People in the area are convinced they're the target of a UFO blitz, and the latest sighting by the trooper Jim Whitaker has strengthened that belief. The city of Lexington is included in that triangle. And these are being reported by police officers, National Guard, fighter pilots, multiple counties. They're not even questioning whether or not it's a UFO that killed this pilot. They are stating it as a fact. UFO sightings reported in area. Unidentified flying objects reportedly were seen in the Butler and Kittening area by several persons Thursday about 8:30 p.m. A UFO was spotted by persons east of Butler flying west, while troopers in the Kittening station received several calls about a similar UFO. The UFO was described by callers as flying twice as fast as a jet. A short time later, the Armstrong County Control Center received 3 calls about a UFO flying near Kittening and in a southerly direction. The Butler newspaper received a call that 4 boys saw a UFO circling a radio tower just south of Butler, and the boys said the object hovered for a half hour, then sped away. Newcastle police received a couple of UFO sightings last week in the North Hill area. That's a lot of UFO sightings. The most well-known case of a UFO sighting in Kentucky is also a cryptid sighting, because there were goblin-type creatures, as they called them. And what's fascinating is that each one drew a picture. There were 3 people that drew pictures of these creatures, and the similarity to the pictures is so good. It's really cool, the pictures that they drew of them. This was a big news story back in the day and hit all the newspapers. This one titled, "Story of Spaceship 12 Little Men Probed Today." Kelly farmhouse scene of alleged raid by strange crew last night. Reports say bullets failed to affect visitors. There's a shootout. And, these are not human. They had supernatural abilities. They were shooting at them, of course, and unable to kill any of them. The research that was done, a lot of it was done well after the fact and not by the police. But the police were called out, and it was a big to-do, and very well known, well reported. Luckily, somebody came back to ask more questions and get more evidence. That's, I think, when they got these drawings. Goblins reported in Hopkinsville. Hopkinsville being more like in southwest Kentucky, but also HELLIER, where the goblins were also reported. HELLIER is in southeast Kentucky, along the border there. With all the underground places in Kentucky, like Mammoth Cave, which is a whole other topic itself, these places likely have cryptids, and a goblin type cryptid 3 to 4 feet high sounds appropriate for that type of environment. But there does seem to be a relationship too with UFOs and all these things. There's just so many UFOs reported all over Kentucky. It's really, really, so far, the most UFOs I've seen reported in a state so far. And that includes like Arizona. Just the amount of UFOs reported in Kentucky is really high. Both the cities of Louisville and Lexington have a history of paranormal activity and being paranormal hotspots. Both were built on top of mound sites from, the ancient times, possibly burial sites. There's a lot of paranormal activity in both of those cities and on the outskirts of the cities. Because Kentucky has such a high level of paranormal activity overall and in general, I consider some unifying theories as an explanation. There is a series that you can watch on Prime, Amazon Prime, and the name of the series is HELLIER, and it is about a married couple and a team of investigators. They go boots on the ground to a tiny little town in the backwoods of Kentucky looking for Kentucky goblin cryptids. The series came out in 2012. It introduced some concepts to me that have resonated with me to this day about unifying theories to explain paranormal activity and synchronicity in terms of doing paranormal research. And they also talk about the state of mind that most people are in when they have these paranormal experiences. And they made the observation that paranormal experiences don't usually happen when life is going great, you're happy, and you're really living in the moment. They usually happen to people in moments of intense emotions or during big life changes like moving or grieving a loss, and even in trauma, in times of trauma and despair. Those are usually the times and the state of minds that people are in, according to them, when they have paranormal experiences. They brought up that I found rather interesting. And as a landscape oil painter, I have always been very interested in backgrounds. And I think when you're researching cryptids, it's important to include their habitat and the landscape. Because Kentucky has such a high level of paranormal overlapping activity concentrated in certain locations like the Bluegrass Triangle, I started trying to think in terms of what might be causing all of the paranormal activity. One thing that I've heard somewhere is it could be due to things like ley lines and Kentucky's position in relation to the equator, the equatorial line that it's on, crossing ley lines. And then I came up with something that's pretty far out there, but many would say that about the Einstein-Rosenthal theory about how wormholes or portals are created. And if it's a case of as above, so below, well, maybe this is possible. With the land and all of its rolling curves and rolling hills and subterranean hollow places underground in Kentucky, all of the curves and ins and outs, maybe it's the land itself, the shape of the land, that could be creating things like gravity wells. And the curves in space affecting the atmosphere and affecting the people, just like the curves in space and how positive and negative space affect each other. These could be the conditions needed to create wormholes, portals, gateways, gateways to and from distant places. Could be related to space and time itself. These paranormal things, of course, I like to look for scientific explanations for them. And speaking of heightened senses, what is up with the feelings that a person who has an encounter with either a ghost or a cryptid all report having? I have actually felt too, which is fear on another level. And being able to sense someone's watching you, sense the presence of a creature that is unknown to us and not seen by most. Like a sixth sense that animals have too when ghosts or cryptids are nearby. The reports of the Goatman, which is a place just outside of Louisville. This is a goat man type creature that people have actually died while searching for. Now, can't really blame the goat man necessarily. There's a train and a trellis, and down below it looks very, very creepy. That's where the goat man resides. With the hoofed hindquarters of a goat and the head and upper body of a human, emerged from 3 Kentucky counties over a span of 130 years. The goat man is nothing new in the world of cryptids because Pan from Greek mythology was a very well-known cryptid, and he is portrayed often as being a very fertile goat man. Another common cryptid that was reported a lot in Greek mythology, a cow man, but like a bull. In pictures and the ancient art of humans interacting, you can see a pattern here. This is just a sidetrack, but I want to show it to you because it's pretty trippy. So I was just vaguely, lightly studying the cow-headed deity in the maze, the Minotaur. And then from there it went to like worshiping the cows. And then there it went to the sacred cow. And then from there it went to comparing the sacred cow, holy cow, to female reproductive system. I never on my own would have ever thought of comparing those two things. But I want to show you the results because it's pretty amazing. And also, I didn't change the proportion of the woman's ovary picture. All I did was, I don't know if I enlarged it or shrunk it, but I didn't change the up and down proportions of it. And it like fit exactly like this. And then on top of that, so I'm looking at those two shapes and thinking that reminds me of another shape that I've talked about in this video, which is the shape of portals and wormholes. And then I overlaid that, all three on top of each other. Similarity is undeniable for what it's worth. Oh, also I came across this old Illuminati drawing, and it's about the sacred cow and about portals maybe. Of course, they're always using symbolism and also secret clues and codes and things that are only recognized by people in the know. And in this picture, they really are also using the negative space to draw something as well as the positive space. So that's something to look at. But it is strange that the Illuminati would also have this sacred cow slash... Are they talking about portals too? I don't know why it looks so similar, but I'm going to leave it at that. The pictures, but you know what? They do use cows a lot for genetic experiments. Those cow mutilations seem like they're related to alien genetic things, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but the similarity is, it's not vague at all. It's very clear that they do look a lot alike. And there's a movie out that I recommend called Lamb. And it has the best ending. I usually don't like endings, but this ending and this movie, it's so good. I highly recommend it. It's about cryptids and about a goat-headed cryptid, a lamb. Thank you so much for watching, liking, and subscribing. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, bye!